3, 2, 1.
You ready?
You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. This is The Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. And, oh my god, making his triumphant return to the podcast, Colin. Colin, how are you, sir?
Good. First time as a dad on the podcast.
I know, so we got to talk about this. So, it's funny you bring that up. I was thinking about it. You haven't been on a recording since Joker. And what a perfect review for you to come back for. I was like, of all the reviews to have Colin back for, of course we pick Marriage Story. But before we get into Marriage Story, dude, new dad, man. How's it feel? Poopy diapers, how are those?
Yeah, poopy diapers are great. Everything's going good.
Perfect.
It's a little harder to get to the theater, so that's a bit of a bummer so far. But it's totally worth it. I'm very happy being a dad.
And you're going to be a great dad, just saying. So I'm very excited.
I'm going to be like Father of the Year. Whatever. That great movie.
Wait, is that Follow the Bride? Is that what you meant? Is there a Father of the Year? I guess there would be.
Or wait, I'm trying to think now.
Because I could totally...
Yeah, the terrible one, the David Spade one.
Oh, God, yeah, that's right.
I was trying to reference the worst movie I could, but...
No, that's fair. I could totally see...
Or there's Father Figures. That's also a bad one.
That sounds great, yeah. I could totally see you being, like, a great... Like a young Steve Martin, just getting into hijinks with Myrtle.
Steve Martin, I don't hate it.
Yeah, like Father of the Bride actually is one of my favorite movies. I genuinely adore that movie.
That's a great one, yeah.
Yeah, I don't own that, and I should buy it. Anyways, so we are talking about Marriage Story and Netflix, man. So I'm gonna review The Irishman this week. I just have not been able to sit down and dedicate 4 hours of just straight spitting through and watching it, because I feel like you need to watch that movie like in one setting, and I just have not been able to sit down and get through.
Yeah, I've tried to watch it and I kept falling asleep, but that's more because I just never sleep anymore.
That's completely fair. Yeah, kids do cut into the sleep pattern a little bit from what I've heard.
So that's a tough one to sit down and watch.
That's completely
start to finish.
That's completely fair. So I don't know about you, but I'm a huge fan of Noah Baumbach, and I started going through his stuff and I went, wow, there's actually quite a few things of his that he's done that I like. He wrote the screenplay for Life Aquatic, and I'm a huge fan of Life Aquatic. He also wrote Fantastic Mr. Fox, and I love Fantastic Mr. Fox. He directed this movie called While We're Young, which I really enjoyed. I think he's a really damn good writer and director, so I was really curious going into this movie, seeing what he was going to do. I know we haven't reviewed the report, but I know that I've heard mixed things. I've heard some people say it's a little too dense, and some people just said like it's just, it kind of is what it is. But the consistent thing I've heard is that Adam Driver is just incredible in it, and Adam Driver is one of those actors that he's at that point I'm excited when I see him in something. I'm like, oh, dude, Adam Driver, hell yeah. Black Klansman, he was incredible in that. And I think if Mahershala doesn't win last year, it should have been Adam Driver. I thought he was brilliant. And I will say, man, Marriage Story, Netflix making that big Oscar push between this and Irishman, and maybe even Dolomite Is My Name, which if you have not listened to that review, you should. But I love this film, but it's one of the harder films I've had to watch in a minute. Kind of your thoughts going in, thinking like as far as what you were kind of thinking heading into this.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe how I feel about this movie too. But going into it, yeah, I checked out who the director was. So Noah Baumbach. I have seen a few of his stuff. Like I watched The Squid and the Whale with Jeff Daniels, and Jesse Eisenberg. That I remember thinking that movie was very interesting, and it was very artsy, and it was very well done. I don't know if I would say it's my favorite style of movie, but it's definitely like I liked it. He's done a lot of screenplay work that I really like. Like he's done stuff for Wes Anderson, like Fantastic Mr. Fox and The Life Aquatic, which I both of which I love. So I mean, I was excited to see what he was gonna do. You first actually told me about this movie. I didn't hear anything about this movie, Marriage Story. You being the big baller that you are now are getting screeners so that you can have your because you're too legit.
Thanks, man.
So you got this before it even came out on Netflix, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So that, and they gave you like a big book or something, is that right?
So Netflix, I gotta say, man, Warner Brothers is kind of like, whatever, here's Joker, whatever, like you probably won't vote for it. But Netflix, man, Netflix is like putting together like a 5-course meal for all their shit. They're like, oh, here's Marriage Story, but hey, you get a booklet of notes from the character's perspective. For Scarlett Johansson's character, you get a book perspective from Adam Driver's character's perspective, and it comes in this baby kind of box. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a trip. So I mean, obviously the presentation, I like shiny things, so I was like, oh, this is cool, but. It doesn't mean shit if the movie, talk shit, but...
Yeah. So what that told me was that they were really pushing for that Oscar, like you were saying. They were giving you that 5-course meal.
And I'll have to show you the one I got for The Irishman, because holy hell.
Nice.
Yeah, Netflix is going for Oscars this year, man. And I showed you the one I got for Roma last year. Netflix is really starting to kind of cut into... movie studios shit, which I know Steven Spielberg is so happy about, but
yeah,
that's a whole nother thing. But the thing about this movie that I love, and I think you remember this movie because we're both big fans of Leo. Do you remember the movie he did with Kate Winslet, Revolutionary Road? Do you remember that movie?
Yeah, I watched that a long time ago.
Yeah, so
I couldn't even tell you the plot.
So it's similar to this. So basically, it's what happened if Rose wasn't such a bitch and screwed over on the door and actually let him get on the door, and they actually got rescued. But it's very similar to that film. What I love about this movie is that it starts off very sweet, and you're like, oh, like it starts off with them talking about what they love about each other, which I thought was just such a very clever way to start this off. I was like, I love that. Okay. What's unfortunate is that is a big, giant kind of gotcha sort of moment, because the movie starts off with them talking about what they like about each other. And then it gets into the aspects of the bad. And they're already, when the movie starts off, they're already like not sleeping in the same bed together, and it's really about the marriage falling apart. But this does feel, it doesn't feel, it feels heavy, but at the same time, you get both their perspectives. I think that's why this is such a hard movie for me to watch, because, and, we always talk about it here. I've known you since I was 12. When I was 12, my parents were going through a divorce. They never actually went through with said divorce, but I was, and I'll be honest, I was a little uncomfortable at points watching this, because I actually spread this movie out over a week. Not because it's too long or anything like that, but just because there were a couple points I went, okay, I need to stop watching this right now at this point. And you understand where both characters are coming from. And I think for Henry the kid, that's the part that hurt my heart the most, because these characters are wanting to go ahead and just live their best lives and try to be the best versions of themselves. The problem is that at a point in the marriage, man, they just stop talking. And that's not just for a marriage, that's for a relationship in general. They just stop talking. And we'll get to it, but they have this fight near the end of the movie that I went, eek. Like, I was really sitting there like, oh, goddamn, this is this is one of those fights you only have with someone that you used to love. So, yeah, man, if you kind of want to get into the plot on this.
Yeah, so like you were saying, this movie is about the marriage falling apart. It starts off on a really good note. Like you said, they were reading what they like about each other as the movie opens. And that was the other thing I was going to say about leading up into watching this movie. I was really excited about Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. I don't think Scarlett Johansson typically gets enough credit for how good of an actress she is.
Thank you.
She gets roped in kind of with her Black Widow character, and sometimes like being that big over-the-top Marvel star will kind of hinder your more artistic performances just because you kind of get typecast. I feel like it happened to several other actors and they weren't able to really shake it. But she's done a lot of good movies where she's just had the ability to kind of have that platform to perform. So anyway, I was excited to see what she was going to do with this. But as far as the plot, yeah, the beginning of the divorce really stems from how Scarlett Johansson's character Nicole really feels like she's trapped in this life that Adam Driver's living. Character Charlie, her husband. They originally moved out to New York to start doing plays. They met when they were in L.A. Actually, at the time, Nicole, Scarlett Johansson's character, was a successful film star. She starred in a teen comedy movie and did pretty well. But instead of pursuing a movie career further, they moved to New York. They had a child. And Adam Driver's plays that he started writing and directing started doing really well. In fact, she was very well renowned in the theater off-Broadway community for her performance in the first iteration of his plays. Nicole, she was very good. But it's been 10 years now. We're at this point where he's the big star of the theater. Now her career has kind of been a little bit more stagnant, hasn't gone much of anywhere. She's more of just the mom. And she even says, there's actually this really profound, really awesome monologue that Scarlett Johansson performs when she's in the room first meeting with this scumbag lawyer, which we'll get to later.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, really what I came away from this movie thinking is that divorce lawyers are the fucking scum of the earth.
Dude, right? Like, oh my god. Yeah, okay.
Like,
so
it's not even these people. It's not even this couple that like is nasty. It's these goddamn succubus lawyers.
So I'll be honest with you, this is one of those movies that will, once you see how the divorce lawyers act, you're kind of like, ooh, getting divorced, okay, like I would want to handle everything in-house because that's
the moral of this story.
These people are fucking monsters, man.
Yeah,
like,
they turn you into monstrous versions of yourself.
And they even like foreshadow that. They're like, well, like we should, because Adam Driver's character, he's the one at first, Charlie, who's wanting to kind of do everything between two of them, and Nicole.
Yeah, they both agreed to do it that way.
Yeah,
at the start, it was that goddamn lady that she was on the TV show with. She was like, "Oh, you gotta call, what's her name?
Nora.
Yeah, you gotta call Nora." She's like, she saved my life, and I was like, she's fucking ruined your life, I'm sure.
Yeah. That's
a weird way to put that.
So PSA, real quick, and I'm speaking specifically to women here. Here comes the deep water. So listen, and I really do mean this. Do not listen to your female or your male friends who have just gone through a breakup, because they're at a point where they're so bitter that their advice is going to be flawed in some way, even if it's not intending to be. And this woman clearly is pissed off at this dude. She calls him a cocksucker, and I was like, okay, he might be a cocksucker, but that's not a good way to preface the advice you're about to give a woman who's going through a divorce. Like, it's coming from a very angry place. And so when she first meets Nora, that first dialogue they have, and I just gotta say too, Laura Dern. First off, I feel like Laura Dern hasn't aged in about 15 years, which is a trip, because I forgot she was in I Am Sam, and I actually really like that movie quite a bit. But I'm a huge fan of Big Little Lies too. I really love that show, and I think she's great on there. And she was in Cold Pursuit, which she was actually really good in. But I'm a huge fan of
Aged
her.
a little bit since Jurassic Park.
A little bit, but she still looks.
Since 93, aged a little bit since 93.
A little bit, but I think she still looks great though. But she's the villain in this movie. Her and Ray Liotta, who, oh man, Ray Liotta, he's not looking like a good fella. He's looking like an old fella. Because Ray Liotta is looking. He's looking a little rough, but he's the scumbag lawyer for Charlie. And the scene they have in the courtroom where they're just ripping into each other, that's when you kind of go, oh fuck, there's no longer like any sort of civility to this. This is a street fight, as Nora calls it. And that's where my heart really started to break, because you just see these little cracks, admittedly cracks, but little cracks that you think maybe that could maybe be salvaged. Even early on in the movie, they're at this Nicole and Charlie, are at this like little shindig, and they have a babysitter who's watching Henry. And the babysitter is really awkward. She's like, "Oh my god, you're both so pretty," which I mean they are. I mean, let's be real, but even that scene, you can kind of see how the cracks are starting to show in their marriage, as far as them getting to where we end up getting. But it's never nasty, and I think that's, for me, is where my genuine sadness came in, outside of relating it to my own life. It was the fact that these people, at a point, clearly loved each other. The things they say about each other clearly come from a place of love at some point. Came from a place of love at some point. But they also got married when they were, 19? 20? And I don't know, dude. Like, this is just kind of coming from me. I just think that's so young to get married in general. Like, I'm 32 and I'm kind of starting to figure myself out. I don't know. But
it's tough when you leave like your family across the country too. Like, she always had plans to come back to LA, where Adam Driver says that, it comes out like, he discussed like maybe going back to LA, but he never really had that in his mind. He always wanted to stay in New York. So, I mean, they were kind of doomed from the get-go, but it certainly didn't have to deteriorate like it ended up like deteriorating. And I think a lot of that's because of these lawyers that made it so awful. And then honestly, near the end, once you see what all the settlements were, like, they could have came to that conclusion
by themselves.
Easily. Like, by themselves so easily. Like, yeah. The way they figured it all out, they would have done that, like civilly, like, amicably, without, like, tearing into the other people and then always having found out, like, the terrible things the other had to say about them. So awful.
Yeah, I think...
But yeah, they were too young, and she was too impulsive. So like it really kind of like ate away at her the entirety of the marriage. And that was kind of what I was getting at from that. So there's this, like, when she's first meeting
Nora,
she has this. She describes like their story. And throughout it, it's like, first of all, it's all done on one take. Like, the camera never cuts away.
Which I love.
And so Scarlett Johansson probably deserves an Oscar nomination just for that one scene. And then the fight scene later on. The two of them both deserve, because that felt so visceral and real. I was like, holy shit. Like,
right?
It was hard to even, like, think I'm watching a movie anymore. I was like, this is really real. And I was like, wow, that's just two actors, like, channeling, whatever emotions they can come up with. And I was like, that's fucking really good acting.
I feel like Scarlett Johansson was picturing Ryan Reynolds. She's like
Ryan Reynolds.
No, I love Ryan Reynolds, but like, I mean, they did have a kind of not great divorce, and so you're kind of like, like, you pull into that shit, like, if we're gonna review something, terrible, I sometimes will pull from an ex and like, oh, you. And then I go on, like Tyler Perry movies, for example. But you're right, though. The way that the movie is filmed, and I think some people, if I'll be honest, I think if you have a problem with this, it's on you. It's not on the film. I love the way that some of these scenes are very long and there's really no cutting. It's really just about letting Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver show out. And I agree with you.
It almost is like a play on Broadway.
Yeah, and I agree with you 1,000%. I think that Scarlett Johansson, I mean, you go down the list of stuff she's done. I think this might be the best year of her career. Between, I thought, a really great performance in Endgame, then she's got Marriage Story, and I know you're gonna be watching here, but Jojo Rabbit, I thought she was excellent in Jojo Rabbit. But I mean, we go down the list here. I mean, I enjoyed her in Jungle Book. I thought she was great in Hail Caesar. I really enjoyed her in Chef, which I thought she was great. Her with Joaquin Phoenix. Hitchcock. I mean, you know, she did do We Bought a Zoo. Not everyone can be great, but
I'm always gonna love her because I fell in love with her in Lost in Translation.
Oh yeah,
and I mean, I know that was a long time ago, and she's evolved a lot as an actress. But that's like one of my favorite indie movies of all time.
Agreed.
And so I just always have a special place. I mean, she's obviously done a lot of stuff that's like not been the best.
The Spirit comes to mind. Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Like,
but yeah, like Under the Skin was like really fucking weird. But
I like Under the Skin, but it is a weird fucking movie. I fully acknowledge how weird.
Super weird.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just in general, I think she's a really good actress. I don't know. I'm pumped for Black Widow too, but that's neither here nor there.
I reviewed the Black Widow trailer, and I'm psyched for it too. Also, nice. I totally forgot she did Match Point, and I really liked her in Match Point. That's one of the few Woody Allen movies recently that I've actually. Wait, when was Match Point? That was 2005. Holy crap, it's been that long. Good God. Yeah, Woody Allen, luckily, you know, his stepdaughter was on set. But,
nice.
Thank you.
I was ripping the lawyers a lot, and this movie really did make me hate lawyers, but I did like the old guy lawyer, Bert Spitz.
Yeah.
Like, he was the lawyer who was just like, he was very reasonable, and he was like, hey, this is how it's all gonna go. But he was just like nice, and he was just like, look, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, like, you know, you want to settle, you don't want to go to court. Like, he was also hilarious. That's the other thing about this movie. A lot of this movie, like, there's lots of parts that are hard to watch and they're really intense, but a lot of this has like a lot of good humor throughout it too. Like, I found myself laughing at like the kind of you know, just how ridiculous certain situations were. Like, there's a scene where all the lawyers it's a deposition, and that's when Bert Spitz is there. And I mean, like, it would go back and forth from like the horrible character bashing of each party, and then they're just like, oh yeah, what do you want from lunch? And he's like, oh, I love that place for lunch.
Right? Yeah.
And it was like, that was so funny. But then you look at the two, you know, people getting the divorce, like Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver, and they're both miserable. And they're just like, how can you think of lunch at a time like this? And they're just like, oh yeah, we're scumbags. We do this every day. This is just how we live.
So it's funny you bring that up. I legit, like, I wanted to be a lawyer for the longest time. Like, I was really looking into it, because, you know, I mean, honestly, being a lawyer and being a film critic, the line is not that far concerning. You have to argue and defend your point. But I remember I actually saw Liar Liar, and that's actually what kind of made me stop thinking about it. It's because I was like, oh my God, like, you have to do this every day and like break up a home and be okay with that guilt. And I feel like at some point, if you're a lawyer, that's why so many lawyers are like probably heavy drinkers and shit, because you just have to numb your conscience to a point you don't think about shit like that. And this movie really hammers that point home. A scene we haven't talked about yet. So there's a scene where Charlie gets off of the plane from New York because he's flying back and forth. And by the way, Nora pulls such a bitch move early on by going, oh yeah, you can't get a lawyer in New York, you have to get one out here. So he has to fly out on his own time to get a lawyer. And I'm just gonna say this as a dude, when they were breaking down, like, if you're the guy, you have to pay for, was it like 30% of your soon-to-be ex-wife's attorney fees, I was like, wait, what the actual fuck? That's a thing. Like, I didn't know how insane divorces were, and this movie gave me an education that, I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I really wanted to know. I was kind of like, this is kind of shitty for the dude. Now, again, before commenters start going about, like, look, I understand that is shitty for both parties. And I understand too that a lot of these rules and these laws were obviously done decades ago when women didn't typically work as much as they do now because our economy's great. But like some of the shit I went, this just isn't fair, like at all. And there's a line later on that Nora drops about how, oh, I got you 55-45 custody, and Nicole's like, no, I wanted 50-50, and Nora basically goes, oh yeah, I didn't want him to brag about getting 50-50 custody. And I was like, wow, what a fucking cunt you are. Like, that just made me go, like,
I know. That was just like, that's why she doesn't see people. She doesn't see a relationship between two humans. She just sees like winning and losing, and she'll just get down in the trenches and get as dirty as she wants to make sure that she can just say that she won. Like, she's such a piece of shit.
Yeah, and Ray Liotta, who plays?
Oh, he's a piece of shit too.
Yeah, yeah,
he describes it the best when he was just like, look, they're going to present crazy and you're going to present reasonable, and if you do that, you're going to end up with a compromise somewhere in between reasonable and crazy, which is still fucking crazy. So he's like, we have to paint them out as crazy so we end up in a point of reasonable, which is a good argument to make, but it's just like, what a fucking horrible profession to be in where that's like your reality.
Right, yeah, because you're like, Charlie is being... So here's the thing. There's something I agree with heavily with Charlie on, and there's something I agree with Nicole heavily on. I agree with Charlie that he's on the fact of, look, we should have handled this in-house. I was saying this shit from the beginning. And she kind of brushes it off when he brings it up. She's like, because she finally kind of gets on his level and goes like, oh, I think we should handle this between ourselves. And he goes... I've been saying that from the beginning. And she's like, well, the circumstances have changed. And he's like, well, I was prepared for your circumstances. Like, kind of like, where the fuck were you?
Yeah, I anticipated this. That's why I said we should handle it in-house. And she's like, I was like, honestly, boom. Like,
yeah, like, no, exactly. Because
like, no shit, Sherlock. Like, yeah, that was the best thing he said.
Yeah, but then on her side, when she's talking to Nora about how, she didn't feel seen and didn't know who she was independent of him, I went, oh shit, well that's fuck, okay. And Charlie ends up fucking was it like a stage manager, or like she's in the play with him. I can't remember if she's a star or what have you, but he ends up fucking her. But Nicole fucked someone first, like right before they got married. So I'm like, well, that's not great. So like, it's just like they both have their shit, and you're like, and the movie is smart enough to not make you choose a side, and I think that's a really smart decision. The movie pretty much presents these two very flawed people, admittedly, and as much as I love Charlie, or I just love Adam Driver too, there is that point where he's very much an artist, where it's very much like, this is how we're doing it, boom, boom, boom. And because so much of Nicole's self-worth is wrapped up in the theater troupe that he, runs, I understand her feeling like she doesn't have a voice. But the line he dropped about how you don't want to have a voice, you just want to bitch about not having a voice, I was like, oh shit, okay. Like, that's when the deep water started raising, and I was like, okay, guys. I was like, stop talking, stop arguing. And, it really, like, that scene alone should get them both Oscar nominations. And we'll get to that in a second. The scene that broke my heart, and it's pretty early on, it's about a third of the way through the movie, is that Scarlett Johansson has a sister in this. And I didn't know this was a thing. You actually, you legally can't be served divorce papers by your spouse. It has to be from someone else. I wasn't aware that was a thing. And so her sister, Nicole's sister, gives them kind of to
That's
Charlie.
A hilarious scene. That's another way this movie, like, a really tough situation that's happening, and a really, like, something that could have been handled, like, really dark and depressing. Like, the director decided that was, like, a good area to make it kind of a little quirky and show the levity of how awkward that situation could go, which I appreciated. I liked kind of being like able to exhale and be like, okay, yeah, that was kind of fun for, as bad as that situation had to have been.
So I don't know about you, man, but Nicole's mom, who Sandra, I want to say,
Yeah.
okay. Did you find her relationship with Charlie really creepy? Like she wanted to fuck him?
Oh, I thought it was hilarious.
Okay,
I didn't think she wanted to fuck him myself. I could see
okay,
how you could see
yeah.
that.
Like there's just a couple
But no,
things I was
I think
eh.
the way I saw it was that Adam Driver was just like really charming and fun and nice to be around, and they all kind of liked him better than Nicole, because Nicole was just like kind of hates her mom, and the sister kind of compares herself to Nicole. So like they all kind of liked Adam. Or, I mean, they all kind of liked Charlie better because he was just like when he walks into the house, they're all just like, "Oh my god," and he's like really funny and great.
Yeah,
I don't
like
know. That's how I saw that situation.
I mean,
He was
fair.
just like so charismatic.
I mean, fair enough, and that's the thing. Charlie is very much a director because he's charming almost to a fault. You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah, like she describes in the opening letter that she reads about him. It's like he remembers all the inside jokes. Like he's like more of a New Yorker than any New Yorker that ever lived there. Like everyone loves Charlie. Like Charlie's like very, very lovable and charismatic. And he already, when they had that fight too, he was just like, I was in my 20s and I could have fucked anything I wanted and I didn't. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like he's like, and now my 20s are gone. There's so many interesting points and perspectives to look at everything that gets like washed out throughout the course of this movie, and it's very, very interesting to think about. But yeah, going back to the scene where they serve him the papers, yeah, I don't know. He's an interesting character for sure.
the thing that just so I again, I'm a dude, so I definitely did. I empathized a lot with Charlie. There's a scene because he's trying so hard, and you can. It's almost like almost Kylo Ren-esque, where he just looks at Nicole a couple times like, if I had a lightsaber, you'd be dead right now. Because there's this whole scene where they're going trick or treating, and he's going as the Invisible Man, and he had a costume made for Henry for Frankenstein, but Henry went out trick or treating with Nicole first. And I'll be honest with you, in kind of a dick move on her part, because they had agreed that, hey, we're gonna be the Invisible Man and Frankenstein, and then his cousins, I want to say, were like, oh, we're gonna be ninjas. So she took him out trick or treating first. So I think they're hitting the town in LA like at 10, something like that.
So sad.
And that just made me so sad for him, because he'd been looking forward to this. He had people at the theater troupe. I want to say the girl he fucked. So if that's the case, but they had determined like, hey, we're gonna go ahead and Marianne, that's her name. But Nicole even hacked his email. I'm like, girl, you can't do that shit. Like, and she like, she goes, I hacked into your account, you dumb fuck. And I was like, whoa.
Like you just admitted to a felony.
Yeah, I was like, you can't hack someone's fill in the blank, their phone, their PlayStation, their email. Like, you can't do that shit. And it really made me sad, because you see how nasty it's gonna get. And but you're right though. I love that nice guy. I like that nice guy lawyer Bert, because he's telling him like, look, this is how it's gonna be. We're in California. He's going to school out here. They're gonna say he should stay in California. But if I'm you, I would do ABC. So I mean, he's giving him good legal counsel, but it's just not the shit he wants to hear.
Can I say something about the that part you were just talking about?
Yeah, please.
And how there's something about the movie that I really liked, how it was written. I thought it was really, really well written. How all these little things that start happening during the movie that don't seem like that big of a deal. Say, for instance, Scarlett Johansson drinking some wine, and she's kind of like stumbling a little bit, and then at one point Adam Driver comes to pick up their kid, and he doesn't have the car seat buckled in, and they all just seem like little things at the time. And then you see when they're now all of a sudden in court, like these awful lawyers are taking every little thing they've heard that's happened throughout the course of the movie that you don't think is a big deal, and they start attacking their character with them, and you're just like, wow, that's so awful. But that was all like expertly laid out and like
it really was
and written. so that like you could just see how all these little things in the moment, they don't seem like that big of a deal. None of it was ever a big deal, but like all of a sudden when you use it and you start piling it together in a list and saying it to a judge, it all sounds really terrible. And I'm just like, and it just, that part made me really hate lawyers more again.
Yeah. So Nora brought up a point that I was like, oh, that is kind of unfortunate. Like, she has a point. So she's talking about, the concept that the Good Father was only invented about 30 years ago, which I'm like, okay, 2010, that puts at the 80s. Yeah, okay, that's probably accurate. But she's talking about how we don't as a society accept the same failings in mothers. Like if someone's like, we don't accept it structurally, we don't accept it spiritually. And I love it. Look, I like a good shot at religion, as you guys know. Even as a Christian, I kind of go, okay, that's good. But the whole statement she made about, the basis of our Judo-Christian whatever, Mary, mother of Jesus, she was perfect, but God's in heaven. She's a virgin that gives birth. What the actual fuck? And I was like, oh, what? Fuck. Okay. Like when I sat there for a second and thought about it, I went, oh, fuck. Okay. Yeah, that's accurate. Honestly, it's fucked, but it's very accurate. And again, that's one reason I love this movie, because the writing is it's about as 50-50 split as you could be, which is a hell of a tightrope to walk, by the way, when you're dealing with this sort of movie. But because Nora is such a bitch, I don't want to agree with anything she says, but she actually had a point there. I also appreciated, too, near the end, as we kind of wrap up here. Actually, before I get there, did you think, and this is like such a mild complaint, but it is somewhat of a complaint, the whole interaction with the social or worker or whatever you want to call her.
Oh god, that was hilarious. That whole scene was
so
funny.
I thought that was so funny, but dude, she's like one of the most uncomfortable people I've seen in a movie in a while, and I think that was the point.
She was she was such a great character. Like, that character was clearly written that way to be like the most awkward, uncomfortable person to be around.
Oh my
ever.
god, I was that
actress actually played that really well.
She did, and you know me, it takes a lot to make me genuinely uncomfortable, but I was uncomfortable watching her. I was like, god damn, like, and then the whole thing, there's this whole scene where a knife is involved, and I was like, don't do this. I was like, no. And
I almost thought that movie was going in the direction where he might bleed out and die. And
I thought
like, oh shit.
I thought the same thing. Yeah, I was like, oh fuck, is this movie about to end on like a really sad note right now?
Yeah.
Like, but wrapping up here, the one kind of criticism I do actually have is when they have their big fight, and I don't even want to. I'll throw out a couple lines from it, but he tells her that she that she's regressing, and that how she'll rebel against this guy in a couple years because she doesn't want to have a voice. She just wants to complain about not having one. And then she retorts with, I think about being about the woman who married you, and she's a stranger to me. And you're just like, oh my god. And I'm sitting there like, you know how almost when you go to a friend, like, you remember when you were like in middle school or high school or whatever, you'd go to a friend's house and their parents have an argument like at dinner, and you're kind of sitting there like, okay, I don't want to move, I'm kind of hungry. Like, it's like that's this scene like perfected, and the way it cuts back and forth between the two of them to see the anger, the hurt, the frustration in their eyes. Like, I oh my god, I love that scene so much. It's one of my favorite scenes of the year, but it's such a heartbreaking scene. But the movie, to its credit, does end on a slight upswing of potential hopefulness, which I thought was actually really nice, and such a subtle thing, because it goes back to the beginning of the movie at a point where she ties his shoes, and it ends in the same way. And I thought that was a really subtle but a very nice, like, okay, like, maybe they can at least be civil.
It was, the movie was very circular, because it starts with the same letter being read about Adam Driver's character that Adam Driver ends up reading with his son at the end as well.
Yeah, which I thought was a very nice touch as well. So, I mean, I have genuine admiration for this film. I'm starting to work on the best and worst stuff here this week, and this will be on here. I don't know how high it's going to be because I still got a lot of crap to watch, but it's going to be on there for sure. I thought this was just so beautifully well done, and as a theater nerd, I do really appreciate how, I think you put it perfectly, how this does feel like a Broadway play. I did laugh really hard that Randy Newman did all the music. And I thought
That's so funny.
He did, and I thought Randy Newman did a great job because, I was like, okay, man, like props on this. But
there should have been more lyrics of him singing, though.
Yeah, he's just like, you had a friend in me. That's what he should have been saying.
Yeah, you had a marriage in us.
Yeah, there you go. But I just thought this was so expertly laid out. I was never bored. I was captivated the whole time. I laughed. I did cry. I did cry earlier this morning while I was watching the big court scene, the fight scene. I was just like, fuck, stop fighting. Like it, But yeah, outside. Oh yeah, that was the one complaint I was going to say I had. Sorry. When they are having their fight, Charlie drops this whole line about how, as long as Henry was okay, I hope or I wish that, you get some sort of disease and you like die slowly. And I was like, Jesus Christ, okay. And the fact that Nicole didn't slap him or just run the fuck out of the apartment, I found it a little odd that he could drop something that vile, drop to his knees and cry, and that she comforted him right afterwards. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that. That just set a little. That felt a little not unrealistic. Because I do know couples where if they were to have this fight, that would happen. But I don't know, for the amount of shit they said in that scene, for her to be so comforting, I found that a little bit of a stretch. So
I the way I saw that, and I can see how you could see it that way. The way I saw that moment was when, like, all of a sudden they had started just like seeing red, and I thought of that scene as them having been poisoned by these lawyers that had turned them into these monstrous people. And then all of a sudden, after he had said basically the worst thing he could think of to say and yell out loud, like, he just realized like what this whole situation had done to him, and he just like fell down in shame. And I think in that moment she saw that too, that like they had let this process turn them into these horrible people. And I thought, at least in that moment, she saw, like, I had a moment of clarity where she felt a little bit responsible to push him this far to say what he just said. Like, she's like, I can't believe you just said that to me and all the horrible things we were saying to each other. But at this moment, I do actually kind of feel a little guilty that you're now crying on the floor because, like, I was the one that went to a lawyer first, and I kind of started us on this path.
That's an interesting point. And like, it wasn't enough to take me out of the scene for me to go like, oh, this is bullshit now. But that's like, and that's me kind of looking for something, to be completely honest, because I was like watching this like, I'm in love with this. Like, what could I possibly complain about? And that was like kind of the one thing I went, if someone were to point that out to me, I'd go, okay, fair enough. But I do fall more in your line of thought where I was just like, yeah, like it's almost like purging your system, almost, how you're like, okay, now I'm kind of back at zero. So, but as far as a grade, man, this is a fan-fucking-tastic. I thought this was just a masterclass in filmmaking, especially in how it's directed. And I'll say right now, Noah Baumbach, he deserves the Best Director nomination. I thought this was just excellent. And for original screenplay, I throw him in there for that too. I thought this was just so fucking well done, and everyone should watch this. I know people are loving The Irishman, and that's cool. But you guys really should watch this. You should go out of your way to watch this. So yeah, fan-fucking-tastic for me. Colin, final thoughts, grades, sir.
Awesome. I love how much you appreciated this movie. I really did too. I would say, wrapping up my thoughts on the plot and how the story plays out and its themes and kind of the morals that you would take away from this movie had like a really profound effect on me. And the most profound effect it had on me was that I don't like lawyers. I really, really hate lawyers now. I always knew about lawyer jokes and blah, blah, blah. Specifically divorce lawyers. And the scumbag ones at that. They may be the worst people on earth. And it really paints them in a way. But I think what gets lost, and by design, intentionally so, this story has kind of the best interest of their child kind of gets lost in all of this. And I think the point, I don't know if it's necessarily trying to make, but the point I took away from it was that really when you bring these lawyers in to really dehumanize your former spouse in such a horrible way, like what you're doing is the one that pays the most is the kid.
Yes.
And I think if they had never gotten these lawyers from the get-go, Adam Driver would have realized that it really was the best situation for his son to be in LA. There's a point in the car where they're driving and he's like, "What do you like about LA?" And he's like, "Well, I like my house better. I like my school better. I like my kids. I like being near my family, my grandma and my aunt." He's like, "The only thing I don't like is that you're not here, but everything else is better." And so Adam Driver would have came to the realization, in my mind, that it was the best situation for his son to be out in LA. And keeping that in mind through all of this, you realize that the lawyers didn't do anything. The situation would have played out the same, where they would have had 50-50 custody. He would have had a second home in LA so that he could be with his kid, where his kid was happier in LA. And then eventually at the end, the really nice silver lining is that Adam Driver moves out. He takes a residency at UCLA. He moves to LA. And, maybe that's not the best in the mind of Adam Driver's character. Maybe he would have been happier himself if his family had stayed in New York and he would have continued to, produce his play on Broadway. But he's making that sacrifice because he loves his son. So that was like the part that how the movie really wrapped up at the end that I really fell in love with. And I thought it had sometimes these movies, they fall on their face at the end. They fall flat with the ending. They don't know how to end it. And I thought this was a really realistic ending. They're not best friends at the end, but they're very civil at the end. And now they're doing what's best for their son, which is a really, really nice way to see this story kind of wrap up in my mind. So that all being said, I loved the story, the writing. Noah Baumbach should get an Oscar nomination, or if not win, and that goes for Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson as well. I really, really love this movie. It's probably my favorite movie of the year so far that I've seen. I have a lot of good movies I need to see still, but yeah, that being said, I'm going to give it a fan fucking test.
Oh, thank God. I after I finished watching this, I was like, I really hope Colin loves this. I do.
I did. It's undeniably great.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people that are just like, I don't like it. I will say that it's a tough movie to watch,
especially
if you are going through a divorce, if you are a child of divorce and witnessed it all firsthand, or if your marriage is rocky. This could be a tough one to watch. So maybe steer clear in that sense. But if you like good acting and filmmaking, then you should probably watch it.
This would not be a movie that you'd be like, "Oh, hey, we're on our honeymoon. Let's watch Marriage Story."
Me and Nikki watched it, and our marriage is great, and we just had a kid, and we're very happy, and we both watched it, and we're just like, "Man, that looks like it sucks." But good thing we're happy at the moment,
dude. No, exactly.
If Nikki and I weren't happy, this would be a tough one to watch. If you have all these this resentment towards another person. That it's a tough movie. Yeah,
I mean, Alea and I, back in October we celebrated 2 years, and it was really funny watching this because I was kind of thinking that same thing. I was like, man, it's like I love Alea to pieces. I'm like, I was like, God help me. I hope we never end up like this. I was like, oh my God.
I will say, God forbid, if anything's ever due, if differences ever arise. I know one thing, and I will never, ever fucking hire a lawyer.
Yeah, oh, dude, absolutely.
That's
seriously.
The biggest takeaway.
No, this movie is a cautionary tale of why to not hire a divorce lawyer, because...
Yeah, just be civil and end up being friends. It'd be better for everybody.
Yeah, and for the kid, because
Yeah. It's not a
yeah,
competition. When you get the lawyers involved, it just devolves into a stupid competition. And depending on how big of a scumbag you're employing, it could get really nasty.
yeah. But yeah, guys, watch this movie. I think there's so much here you can break down, and we didn't even really cover everything because there's just the thing I think I would say that's a big surprise as we wrap up is how dense this movie is. There's so much you can take away from this. I was like, wow, this is a not just a heavy movie, but there's just so much here to take away and break down, and I love movies like that. So yeah, guys, go ahead and watch Marriage Story. Have you seen Marriage Story? Let us know what you thought in the comments below. You can go ahead and like us on Facebook at The Real Pineapple. You can follow us on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify.
Silly Hunter.
Yeah, Spotify's a spinoff. Spotify, Podbean, and a Stitcher Radio at The Real Pineapple. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter at JHunterRealPineapple. You can follow Scott on Twitter at Nearmanthefirst. And you follow Colin on Twitter at
TheReelOneal.
Guys, thank you so much for listening. We will have a review up this week for Jumanji: The Next Level, because that's coming out Thursday. I think that's like the only new. Oh, there's Black Christmas. I'm not seeing Black Christmas, so I will go see Jumanji at some point this weekend. But we'll have a review up for that. We'll have a review up for The Irishman, which again I will sit through and I will get through it. I'm excited to watch it. I'm curious. We'll see. But then we'll also have a review up as well for Queen and Slim, which I just saw last week and haven't had a chance to review, but I just got the screener on it, so I'm going to rewatch it and have thoughts. But guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. We will talk to you soon.
Peace.